They nicknamed it weather duty, the safest job for a new pilot. Just take off, analyze wind patterns, and return. Nothing threatening about some clouds or airflows until Lieutenant Hayes' radar erupted with signals. 17 armed drones appeared out of nowhere. No reinforcements. No help. No time. The base she left just 7 minutes earlier was now squarely in the sights of something no one had anticipated. Numbers paratutti, showing Europe, Africa. From which part of the world are you tuning in today? If you're into real-life bravery and high-stakes situations, hit subscribe and discover more powerful stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary danger. Morning broke over Westfield Air Base, casting elongated shadows across the runway. A thick fog drifted between hangars, giving the scene a surreal quality. Ground crews worked efficiently, prepping aircraft for the day's assignments. Inside, pilots assembled for mission briefings. Among them walked Lieutenant Karina Hayes, her figure partially obscured by the haze as she headed toward the smaller recon hangar, separate from the main fleet. Murmurs followed her, less judgmental, more curious, tinged with a mix of pity and confusion. Back on weather duty, one mechanic mumbled to another, loud enough for Hayes to hear as she passed. "That's her third time this week," came the reply. "Shame to waste talent like that on wind checks." "But orders are orders." Karina kept her posture straight, eyes fixed ahead as she approached the briefing room. 6 months on base and still, the sideways looks hadn't faded. Half a year of routine recon runs, while her academy peers progressed into complex combat missions. She opened the door to find Commander Reeves studying charts with the meteorology team. "Ah, Hayes, right on schedule," Reeves said without glancing up. "Standard recon flight today. We need accurate wind data before the training op at 1,600 hours. "Yes, sir," she replied, standing at attention. "Sky should be clear across the sector." "Smooth flight," Reeves added, finally looking up with a smile meant to be comforting but laced with condescension. "Pre-flight checks in 15. Any questions?" "No, sir." "Good. Dismissed." As Karina turned to leave, he added almost casually, "And Hayes, keep it simple today. By the book." In the locker room, Karina got ready with habitual precision, checking her gear carefully. Her fingers brushed against a photo taped to her locker mirror, graduation day. She had been top of her class. Her instructor said she had sky in her blood. That was before the incident, before one reckless choice landed her in this monotonous loop of weather runs. The door opened. Captain Daniels of Falcon Squadron walked in with 2 fellow combat pilots, dressed for a high-intensity training drill. His tone was professional, detached. "Lieutenant," he nodded. "Captain," she replied with equal formality. A brief silence followed as they suited up. One of the younger pilots, Rodriguez, tried making conversation. "Looks like good weather for our exercise, huh, Hayes?" "That's what I'm here to confirm," she answered with a slight smile. "Well, we appreciate it. Last week's crosswinds nearly threw off my landing. Daniels cut in gear up, Rodriguez. Briefing in 5. As they left, Karina caught Daniels murmuring to Rodriguez, "You'll be fine. Weather duty's perfect for a rookie." She wasn't supposed to hear that, but she did. Rookie. Despite her hundreds of hours in the cockpit. Despite everything. 20 minutes later, Karina taxied her sleek recon jet down the runway. The aircraft lifted smoothly, slicing through the morning sky. The radio buzzed with routine air traffic chatter. "Maintain heading 270, altitude 5,000. "Roger, control." "Echo 3 holding 270 at 5,000, she responded, hiding her irritation behind a calm voice. As the base vanished into the horizon, replaced by sky and cloud cover, she allowed herself a moment of quiet joy. Whatever the mission, she was flying, and up here, she felt right. "Control, Echo 3 initiating survey. Initial readings confirm forecast, clear skies, light winds. Copy, Echo 3. Continue standard grid." Karina gently tilted the aircraft and began her systematic data collection, measuring wind speed, air pressure, and atmospheric stability across her sector. Her hands worked out of habit, her mind only half present. 7 minutes in, something pinged on her radar. Barely noticeable. She recalibrated, probably a glitch, or maybe birds. "Control, Echo 3, slight irregularity on radar. Might be equipment error." Diagnostics read normal. Can you specify the anomaly? The controller replied. Before she could, the blip magnified. Multiplied. Her screen exploded with signals, 17 blips, all moving with focused precision. Not birds, not interference. Something deliberate. Control, Echo 3, I've got multiple unknown aircraft on radar. 17 total. Heading 190. Emerging from cloud cover. Silence. Long seconds passed. Echo 3, confirm. 17? Affirmative. Information. No response to ID queries. Background chatter escalated. Then Reeves's voice broke through tight with tension. Lieutenant Hayes, this is Commander Reeves. Satellite confirms they're unmanned drones. Likely armed. Their path leads straight to the base. Protocol is clear. Retreat now. You're not combat equipped. Karina watched the drone shift into attack formation, speeding up. She did the math in her head. Less than 10 minutes to impact. The hangars, their primary target, were filled with parked combat aircraft. Pilots still in briefings. No way they could scramble in time. Control, request immediate support and full base alert, she said firmly. Her pulse surged, but her voice stayed calm. Support en route, Lieutenant. Fastest ETA is 30 minutes. Again, your orders are to return immediately. Karina's mind worked fast. Her plane was built for speed, not combat. No weapons, no armor. But it was agile, and she knew every inch of it. She looked again at the tactical display. The drones were zeroing in on the squadron's core infrastructure. If they got there, it was over. They're not going to make it in time, she whispered, fingers hovering over the controls. And in that instant, she made her decision. Control, be advised. I'm changing course to intercept. Negative, Lieutenant. That is a direct violation of orders. Your aircraft is not combat-equipped. Return to base at once. Karina inhaled deeply, then banked the plane hard, steering directly into the path of the incoming swarm. Her hands moved quickly over the console, activating functions rarely used in weather missions, electronic jamming, enhanced agility systems, and emergency flight mode she'd only seen in training scenarios. Lieutenant Hayes, what are you doing? Commander Reeves's voice was sharp with alarm. I gave you a direct order to retreat. With all due respect, sir, Karina said evenly, accelerating toward the hostile targets. If I turn back now, the base won't stand a chance. Those drones will reach Westfield long before any backup arrives. I can delay them. The last thing she heard before focusing fully on the threat was Reeves's voice, part disbelief, part grim acceptance. God help you, Hayes. As the gap between her and the drones closed, Karina prepared to do what she was trained for, but never allowed to prove. She was seconds away from facing death head-on, and somehow she had never felt more alive. The lead drone came into sight, its metallic frame catching the sunlight. 16 others followed in tight formation, deadly and coordinated. Between them and the base stood only her, a lone, unarmed pilot choosing not to run. Back at Westfield, the air in the control room shifted from routine to panic in a heartbeat. Commander Reeves stared at the radar display, mouth slightly open as 17 hostile signatures closed in on the base. Behind him, technicians worked frantically to get comms up, and senior officers crowded around the tactical board. How the hell did they get this close without being spotted? Colonel Peterson asked as he rushed in. Stealth systems, one analyst answered. They stayed in the clouds until activating their targeting. By then, Lieutenant Hayes was already in their airspace. Reeves slammed the comms button. Lieutenant Hayes, that's a direct command. Abort now. You have no defensive capabilities. The radio hissed before Karina's calm voice responded. Sir, respectfully, I'm all that stands between those drones and the base. Estimated time to target, 8 minutes. No way our fighters make it up in time. Peterson leaned in, eyes narrowing. Who is this pilot? Lieutenant Karina Hayes, Reeves replied tensely. Recon. Assigned to weather duty. Why is one of our people out there alone? Peterson asked, clearly frustrated. Reeves didn't answer. His eyes stayed glued to the screen where one blue dot headed straight for a sea of red ones. She's a rookie. What a recon is supposed to be a safe assignment. High above, Karina calculated her next move. Her aircraft wasn't built for combat, but it was lighter, faster, and more agile than most. No weapons, no armor. But she had speed, high-end sensors, and instincts. She pulled the jet into a steep climb, charging straight toward the swarm. The drone shifted. 6 broke off to intercept her, the rest pressing on toward Westfield. Just as she had hoped. Control, I've got their attention. At least some of them. They're behaving predictably, treating me as a primary threat since I'm heading straight at them. Reeves, watching the display, frowned. Even if you draw some away, what exactly is your plan? You can't fight them. No, Karina responded, pushing through rising G-forces as she climbed. But I don't need to shoot them. I just have to confuse them long enough for our jets to launch. Leveling out at high altitude, she watched the 6 drones, matching her altitude and speed. They fanned out into attack formation, flanking her. Karina studied their movements. They weren't basic drones. These machines moved with precise coordination and adaptive response. She kicked her speed up to the max, then suddenly cut her engines and pulled off a move so extreme only her recon jet could manage, a modified Cobra stall, reversing her momentum midair. 2 drones flew past her, unable to adjust in time. Control, these drones are using advanced pursuit programming, she reported. But they're calibrated for standard combat responses. I'm using non-traditional flight patterns. They're not keeping up. She restarted her engines and dove behind the confused pair, now vulnerable. In the control room, tension gave way to astonishment. Peterson stepped closer, watching the blue dot perform unbelievable maneuvers. Who is she? He asked again, this time in awe. Where'd she learn to fly like that? Reeves pulled up her file. Top of her class at the academy. Perfect scores in combat sims. But 6 months ago, during joint exercises, she broke formation to help a pilot with a system failure. Disobeyed direct orders. They labeled it reckless and reassigned her. Peterson watched another improbable aerial maneuver on the screen. Hayes diving into cloud cover with 3 drones on her tail. Doesn't look reckless to me, he muttered. Looks like the pilot we need right now. Above the clouds, Karina initiated Phase 2. She lured her pursuers into a dense storm system she had just surveyed. Moisture and static disrupted their sensors. 2 lost her, flying in wide circles, blind. Control, I've disabled 5 at least temporarily, she reported. They're designed to avoid mid-air collisions and require active tracking. I'm using that against them. She checked her readouts. The remaining 11 drones were still on course, but now more scattered. A few had begun shifting toward her again, dividing their focus. Lieutenant, status on your fuel? Reeves's voice came through. 58%, she answered, already calculating. Enough for what I have in mind. She dove again, bursting from the cloud bank and rocketing straight at the main group. It was a move no tactical guide would recommend. One unarmed plane charging a wall of combat drones. But Karina had noticed something, a pattern in how the drones reshuffled when threatened directly. Control, are the base defenses online yet? Confirmed, came the reply. Anti-air systems are hot, but won't engage while your aircraft is in the zone. It's too dangerous. Perfect, Karina said, a spark of satisfaction in her voice. That's exactly what I'm counting on, she whispered, pushing the aircraft to its limits and diving straight into the center of the drone formation. As anticipated, the swarm broke formation, some peeled off to intercept her, while others continued toward the base. That split was exactly what she needed. Inside the control room, stunned silence hung thick as technicians and officers watched what looked like a suicide charge. Reeves moved to stop it, but Colonel Peterson placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Wait, he said quietly. I think I see your strategy. Karina's aircraft sliced through the middle of the formation like a missile. The drones scattered to avoid a collision. In that brief moment of chaos, she pulled into a punishing vertical climb, so steep that warning alarms screamed, and the fuselage groaned under pressure it was never designed to handle. 3 drones gave chase, mimicking her maneuver with machine-like precision. Now, she muttered, cutting the thrust and slamming the air brakes. Her jet seemed to freeze in midair for a moment before tumbling backward. The drones, unable to adjust in time, overshot her position and lost formation. "Control, I'm luring 3 of them into our defense perimeter from above. They're isolated. Have the gunners ready," she said. The base's anti-aircraft systems locked on. Within seconds, tracer fire filled the sky, and the 3 disoriented drones were shredded, falling as smoldering wreckage. 14 still remained, but their once perfect formation was now fractured. In the control center, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "Who authorized this op?" Heads turned. General Warner had entered the room, his face hard as he studied the tactical screens. "Sir, we have a developing situation," Reeves began. 17 hostiles, no prior warning. "I can see that," Warner interrupted, pointing at the display. "What I want to know is, who gave a recon pilot permission to engage?" Before Reeves could respond, Peterson stepped forward. "I did, sir." The room went quiet. Warner and Peterson locked eyes for a moment. Then the general looked back at the screen, watching Karina's aircraft weave through the sky, keeping the remaining drones scattered and disorganized. "And who exactly is Lieutenant Hayes?" Warner asked. Peterson nodded to a junior officer, who quickly pulled up her file and projected it. As Warner read, his stern expression softened with recognition. "Hayes, from the Blackwater incident." "Yes, sir," Peterson confirmed. "The pilot who broke protocol to save Captain Daniels when his oxygen system failed during joint ops." Warner studied the screen silently. "And now she's out there alone in a recon jet, holding off 14 drones?" "Technically 11, sir," a technician interjected. "She's neutralized 6 already." A hint of admiration crept into Warner's expression. "Well, I'll be damned." In the sky, Karina kept flying as if possessed. Every maneuver she'd ever learned, every simulator test, every restricted tactic came rushing back. The aircraft responded like an extension of her own body, flying beyond its design capacity. Westfield's defenses took out 2 more drones as they drifted into range. Karina, sweating and straining, glanced at her fuel gauge. Nearly empty. She had 5 minutes left at most. "Control, I need a status update on our fighters," she called out, her voice showing the first signs of fatigue as she pulled into another crushing turn. 7 minutes to liftoff, Lieutenant, came the reply. Not fast enough. She watched the surviving drones regroup. Their programming had begun adapting. They were learning from their losses. She was out of tricks, low on fuel, and nearly out of time. But none of the drones had reached the base. As she dodged a drone that had successfully predicted her maneuver, a memory flashed the final simulation scenario at the Academy. The one no one ever passed. Not because it was unwinnable, but because they all tried to win. Sometimes winning wasn't the goal. Sometimes just staying alive was victory. Sometimes buying time saved lives. "Control," she said, voice firm again, executing maneuver protocol Sigma-9. In the control room, Warner's head snapped up. "Sigma-9? That's classified. How does she even know about it?" Peterson remained stone-faced. "Might want to check the rest of her file, sir." Warner turned back to the screen, watching as Karina performed movements that ignored every known tactical playbook. The drones couldn't predict her. Their formation unraveled further. "Sigma-9, Warner repeated. "That was developed for our elite squadrons, never even introduced at the Academy." She was selected for Project Nighthawk. The program was shelved before deployment. Reading the entry, Warner's eyes widened slightly. She was the top candidate. She was, Peterson said. After Blackwater, they labeled her a liability. She got reassigned. Back on the radio, Karina's voice broke the silence. "Control, initiating final phase of Sigma-9. Request clearance for emergency countermeasures." Warner grabbed the mic himself. "Lieutenant Hayes, this is General Warner. You're authorized. Proceed." Karina blinked in brief surprise, hearing the general's voice. Then she pushed all distractions aside. With fuel nearly gone, systems overheating, and drones tightening their net, she had one final move left. She sent the aircraft into a vertical climb, engines roaring as she redlined every system. The remaining drones followed, their programming locked on her as the primary threat. Warning alarms erupted across her console. She ignored them, watching her altitude rise to the stratosphere. Control, be advised. I'm activating EMP bursts from the recon suite, reconfiguring sensors to emit on drone command frequencies. This was Sigma-9's real purpose, converting recon tech into a makeshift electronic warfare system. It would burn her systems out completely, but if it worked, it could cripple the drones long enough for the base to launch a proper defense. 20 seconds to system overload, she said, voice steady despite the aircraft shuddering violently. In the control room, all eyes were locked on the screen. Her altitude climbed past safe limits. The drones closed in. She's not going to make it, Reeves muttered, watching the last of her fuel vanish. She will, Peterson said quietly. That's why she was Nighthawk's #1. At 58,000 feet, far beyond the aircraft's rated ceiling, Karina performed the final maneuver. She killed all power, flipped the plane upside down, and let it fall backwards into the pursuing drones. In the same motion, she rerouted all remaining energy to the recon suite. One by one, the systems overloaded, triggering a powerful EMP. The result was instant. The closest drones, caught in the burst, stuttered mid-flight. Control signals were scrambled, navigation systems fried. Their formation collapsed as chaos spread through their ranks. One by one, the drones began spiraling out of the sky, falling helplessly to Earth in uncontrolled dives. Control countermeasures deployed, Karina announced, her voice tight with strain as she fought to stabilize her own aircraft, now in a steep descent, multiple systems still offline. All drones appear neutralized. Requesting update on base defenses. Base defenses are tracking final targets, came the immediate reply. 6 confirmed disabled by your EMP burst. 3 still functional but disoriented. Anti-air units engaging now. Westfield's defense system sprang into action, locking onto the remaining drones and destroying them with pinpoint accuracy. The threat had been neutralized. But Karina's crisis wasn't over. Her aircraft, still in a power dive, was barely responsive. Systems were slowly rebooting from the EMP overload, and her fuel levels were nearing zero. Lieutenant Hayes, report your status, General Warner demanded, tension heavy in his voice. Systems coming online, she responded, hands moving fast over the controls with focused urgency. Attempting to regain flight control, fuel critically low. From the control room, they watched the blue dot representing her plane plummet in a vertical line. The room was silent. "Come on, Lieutenant," Warner whispered, his fists clenched against the edge of the console. At 12,000 feet, the aircraft systems finally came back online. With precision honed by instinct and training, Karina pulled the plane out of its dive, leveling off just as the engine began sputtering on its last drops of fuel. "Control, partial control restored," she radioed, her voice finally revealing fatigue. "Estimated 3 minutes of fuel left. Requesting emergency landing clearance." "Granted immediately," Reeves replied. "Runway 27. Emergency crews are standing by. You have priority." With the threat eliminated and her aircraft limping back, Karina finally let herself process what had happened. 17 armed drones, capable of wiping out the entire squadron, were gone. The base was intact, and against all odds she was still alive. The sun dipped low on the horizon as she guided the damaged aircraft toward Westfield. Smoke trailed from one overworked engine. The runway lights flickered on, and fire trucks and medics took positions along the tarmac. "Control beginning final descent," she reported, adjusting for compromised control systems. "Landing may be rough." "Understood, Lieutenant," Warner responded. "Just land in one piece. That's an order." "Yes, sir," she answered, managing a faint smile. "One piece it is." The landing was brutal. One engine gave out just before touchdown, and the controls were sluggish, but Karina leaned entirely on her instincts and raw skill. The plane hit the runway hard, bounced once, then steadied and finally rolled to a halt. Emergency crews swarmed her plane. Karina remained seated for several seconds, heart pounding, hands gripping the controls. Finally, she shut down the systems and opened the cockpit. She expected mechanics and medics. Instead, she found nearly the entire base watching. Pilots, engineers, radar operators, everyone stood in silence as she removed her helmet and climbed down. Commander Reeves was the first to approach, expression unreadable. Karina stood at attention, ready for a reprimand. Instead, Reeves saluted, an unexpected gesture of deep respect. 17 hostiles eliminated, he said loudly. You just saved this base, Lieutenant. Before she could respond, two more figures emerged from the crowd, General Warner, flanked by Colonel Peterson. Lieutenant Hayes, Warner said, his commanding voice cutting through the quiet. That was either the most reckless or the most brilliant aerial operation I've ever witnessed. Thank you, sir, Karina replied, still standing tall. I didn't say I approved, Warner added, though there was a glint in his eye. You ignored a direct retreat order. You activated a black-level combat protocol that shouldn't have been accessible to you. Yes, sir. Warner's stern facade cracked slightly. In doing so, you saved everyone on this base. He paused. The weather assignment wasn't punishment, Lieutenant. It was a test. Karina's confident posture faltered just slightly. Peterson stepped forward. Project Nighthawk wasn't shut down. It was reorganized. We needed to identify pilots who could think independently, who knew when to follow orders and when to break them for the right reasons. Warner added the drone attack wasn't staged, but your response was exactly what we hoped to see from a potential Nighthawk operative. As realization dawned, the crowd shifted, and from behind them, Falcon Squadron approached. Captain Daniel stepped forward holding a patch, but it wasn't the usual Falcon insignia. It was sleek and dark, showing a jet against the night sky with a single word beneath it, Nighthawk. Welcome to Nighthawk Squadron, Lieutenant Hayes, Daniel said, his former skepticism replaced with admiration. Turns out you've been flying with us all along. We just needed to know you were ready. Karina accepted the patch, and the crowd erupted into applause. For the first time in 6 months, she felt the weight of doubt lift, replaced by pride. The next morning, she stood in a new briefing room, wearing the Nighthawk emblem. Warner and Peterson addressed a small group of elite pilots handpicked from problem cases, secretly evaluated under pressure. Nighthawk Squadron isn't just another unit, Warner explained, revealing a display of futuristic aircraft designs. It's the future of aerial warfare. And we need thinkers, pilots who act when the book runs out of pages. Peterson continued, Lieutenant Hayes showed us what Nighthawk is about. Courage under fire, calculated disobedience, and turning the impossible into possible. He looked at her directly. The weather duty you resented? It made you an expert in atmospheric conditions, and that saved us all. What looked like punishment was preparation. Outside, dawn broke over the runway as the first of the new aircraft were rolled out. Sleek, advanced, deadly. Karina would no longer fly behind others. She would lead. They had given her weather duty because they thought it was safe. 7 minutes later, she faced death alone. Now, she would train others to dance with it.